Sorry about that. One of these days I'm going to figure out how to get the Mac hooked up to the projector circuit.
Oh, it didn't do it?
Couldn't get it. The Mac recognized it, but I couldn't get the projector recognized the other way around.
Have an outlet at home, and I guess it must not.
So I want to start with back to what Professor Sonny was saying, and say, you know, I come in here and talk about DoD and complex systems engineering and all the how we derive things and tie it together and improve its performance. DoD systems engineering for complex systems is easy compared to what we're trying to do. Okay, in DoD, you may be given this. I'm going to go build a satellite, a rocket, what have you. But you have very well-defined top-level requirements. I've got a mission. I've got to get some kind of capability over some distance away. It needs to have this level of time to get there, this level of mission capability and response, hours on station. You've got very high-level requirements. And then what they do is they start to derive them, say, okay, if the purpose of the mission is to do X, and to do X, the customer thinks we need to do Y and Z and A, then we start to derive down and say, okay, what does that mean in terms of having, given the state of the technology, of having any kind of asset in the region? You know, and you start to do your what-if analysis of deriving requirements to your top-level requirements. And as it goes further down the system, design or further system specification, you start to then allocate budgets of your requirements. You say, okay, I've got to be able to get to a certain distance in a certain period of time. This particular asset is going to do this particular capability, requirement-wise. We don't know what the answer is yet, but we're saying requirement-wise. And you start to drive this down to these different subsystems, and then you turn your designers loose. Designers go say, okay, here's my allocations. I've got to be interoperable with this system. They get together and say, here's how I'm going to communicate with you. And as that's designed and built, you now have very specific requirements, all in a traceable hierarchical fashion, to where then you can say, am I delivering from each subsystems? As I integrate them together, do they play nice? Do they deliver what we wanted to at the end? So you're going down and back up the system engineering V to build a highly complex system. And through that, they've derived different kinds of tools to help them. When I first came to Watch Fellow, I said, where's our OB1? You may know what an OB1 is? It's an operational view. It's basically a cartoon for a complex system or mission, and says, here's how things work around here. You know, we want to do this. These assets are going to come into play. They're going to deliver this capability, and that's the goal. And then as you go down that, you can start to say, okay, what does the system look like? What are the interfaces? What are the information flows? How do the people work together? So it's highly complex, but it's top-down driven from the start. Okay? Now watch well. We have legacy from something back in World War II. And we have a factory that has evolved from that. Okay? And we have our goals, you know, protecting the nation. Those have evolved over time, you know, powering the nuclear navy, helping with non-proliferation, those kinds of missions. But we have a factory, a community that has evolved around that changing mission. We don't have this top-down anymore. So the challenge to all of you here, at least in the Watch Developers, is to say, okay, given we have what we have, how do we best understand it from a systems view, and then how do we influence to make it better aligned and producing where the company and the nation says we need to go. Okay, so when I say DoD, I'm proud of the fact that it's got all this wonderful legacy and it works and this kind of thing, but it's easy compared to what you're trying to do here. I can tell you that. Going into our factory, understanding how things operate, and then trying to derive back and tie it back to our goals and requirements and build this interconnectivity is not trivial. Okay? So I guess the time before last, I sketched up some, you know, here's sort of a model of how business happens at Watchwell. This is not a great model, but I put a little more time into it to make it a little more legible than my drawing up here. And I want to talk about it today from your perspective at Watchwell. And so I'm going to move around here. I talked at first about, federal money comes in. There's a program. They have a decade-long plan. You're typically not trying to get the revenue in. You're trying to say, how do I do this effectively and efficiently and deliver for our customers? So it's a different business model. However, we're stewards of our money, their taxpayer dollars. So we want to do it efficiently. Program have agreement on what they want to produce, by when, and they have certain ideas of what the dollars are. They have certain ideas of how many people it takes to do that. You can go to what's called the SMMP every year. They say, here's our strategic plan, and they'll say out for each of our plants, Watchwell, Pantex, Kansas City, what are we doing there? How many people does it take? How much money is it going to take? Okay, so they're trying to do long-range planning, and they're trying to execute that plan. So when they come in, they've sold Congress 2 years at least previously how much it's going to cost. Okay. At the same time, they feel the pressures to say, okay, it's too expensive. How do we get it more efficient? So how do we save money so that they can do more with it on the out years? Okay. So CNS comes in and says, hey, we're going to merge 2 sites. We're going to take best practices of both sites. We're going to put them together. We're going to make this more efficient with some new techniques, these sorts of things. And they sell to the customer how they're going to do that. And the way they sold it was something called the annual cost baseline, I get it wrong, ACB, I'll remember. And it's an annual budgeting process, but it's driven by a merger transformation plan that was put in the proposal. And they said for the next 10 years, this is how many people we need at each site for these operations, by people who had never worked at either site. Okay. To a customer who had never thought of it that way. In fact, years past, the way politics works, part of it is having jobs in your state. Okay, so how many jobs can we get in our state? How can we do it effectively, but also keep people employed? So you have this culture of very proud of what we do, very dedicated to what we do, but it's very much a people-oriented business. You're the expert in what you do, and you are in yours, and you are in yours. And so processes have evolved around that system, okay, from the 40s. And so due to other things that happened over the years, no more nuclear testing. So we're going to be building what we built years ago. Let's not change anything in our processes. We don't want to mess that up. We know what worked before. Let's make sure we do it again, right? So you have all that heritage here. And you have a certain cost that had been predicted 10 years ago, and now they're starting to execute, and they've sold it for the last 2 years. And we come in and said, okay, we're going to drive down costs, and the way they think about driving down costs, the way that a customer can measure it, because this is the way they're thinking, is heads. I only need so many people. That's what I've sold Congress on. So how many heads do you have? Okay. At the same time, this is not static. Every year, the work scope is changing. There's more that's coming online. Something happens at the plant that we have to go and resolve and do. So work scope changes. So you have to adjust based upon your workforce here. The workforce is coming in here. You have to adjust what you're going to do to the needs of the program. And all of a sudden, something you never had before 2 years ago, this headcount limit. Okay? So the company has sold the government that we're going to merge them and we're going to reduce headcount. We're going to execute the mission just as well as we always did. And we're going to have a cap on our headcount. Okay? Now, in the meantime, we're all trying to figure out how to improve cost effectiveness. So we may come up with a process improvement. We may come up with a new technology, these kinds of things. And you can look at it and you can get all the analysts to look at it and say, okay, yeah, we're going to have greater throughput. we'll get more weeks out the door. That's for, it's a cost savings in anything you look at outside. However, what we sold was headcount, and the way the customer thinks is number of heads. And so we now have to validate and verify that we had those cost savings. They may take a couple of years to really mature. And so now, just in this part alone, we have some hidden loops here of customers looking at your cost savings, your great idea, and trying to validate it against this conception of headcounts. And oh, by the way, the people who approved this on the government side are now long gone. So there's a lot of hidden loops here in terms of the MTP, the ACB approval, and validating cost savings. If somebody's not retiring out the door and I don't replace them, it's hard to convince a customer who's never dealt with that before. Okay? So now, you're executing, you're a department, you have a workforce, you know what it takes to do the job, you've done it for decades, right? You have, I don't know how many procedures around here, and you know what it takes to do the job. You've done a basis of estimates. They give you a head cap, you say, well, I'll do the best I can, right? You have a goal for you to reduce it even further for your department. And a program manager comes in here and says, okay, here's so much money. I have a quality I need to get out of it. I have a production schedule I need to get out of it. And I can't spend any more money than this, okay? So you have a workforce that's coming in here, and they're producing to what the program needs. And you can see I mapped out several different loops here. You know, when money comes out of here, we spent some of it, so there's a feedback to the program manager, so he knows how much has been spent. They have a goal for the money, so there's also that balancing loop here. So there's knowledge as well as the balance. Work product comes out. Unfortunately, not everything works the way you expect. So you have some quality rejects. So you have some of them decreasing here. Where's the mouse? You may see the mouse here. Oh, it's on the other thing. Okay. There it is. Thank you. So you ship some of them, it comes back and you're looking at your schedule goals, that feeds back to the program manager. And there's a balancing loop back this way, okay? So you're spending money, you're monitoring the money, you're making product, it ships out, everything's glorious. Let's assume that everything's working perfectly, right? And then you're staffing, okay? So on the staffing loop down here, all of your departments, you come together and you say, you know what, based upon what we know is coming down the pike, we have so many engineers, maintainers, whatever it is, we need so much workers, and you forecast that. And you're constantly monitoring, you know, every month, you know, hey, we had 3 people leave, we're gonna get this out next 6 months, so we're gonna adjust what we need on staffing wise. That becomes staffing demand. However, you've got a headcount limit. Oh, we don't want to go above that, right? I'm good. I've got a few headroom here, so I'm going to go ahead and authorize HR to staff and recruit. Let's go feed into my staffing here. I still have people retiring. That goes up to my workforce. Oh, by the way, to get the work done, I can't hire enough people. I'm going to do staff log or other subcontracting here, and so I'm going to approve some recruitment of staffers. And oh, by the way, there's a hidden loop here that I didn't know when I first came to Y12. I kept hearing the acronym RIP. I think, well, people are dying. The acronym at Y12 for RIP means retirement in place. And you already know what it is, right? So because we're such a people-oriented, specific skills, U2, I think one of the first ones are numerical controllers. This equipment is old, it has to be programmed a certain way. You built those skills up, you're retirement eligible, you're ready to go. You want to retire. However, you also know, hey, I can retire, become a staff aug, make some more money, do the same job. So we've got a hidden loop in here of retirements that decide to retire in place and become staff augs. Okay? That's Y12. I'll just talk about that for a minute. You'll know that for a bit. So at Y12, you got sort of a after retirement income. Okay. At Pantex, they decided about 5 or 6 years ago they didn't want any subcontracting like that, so they did away with it all. Okay. Normally, when you think about what we want to think about extra subcontractors are capacity. You know, if you have a different demand in your workload, you want to be able to have extra capacity when you need it. When you don't, you want it to go away, right? Okay. So at Y12, they said, hey, this is a great idea because we have extra capacity, we leverage their valuable work, experience, and it's a great thing. Unfortunately, it becomes a little bit addictive, like a drug. Okay, you know what? Hey, can't staff them. I've got some limit here. I'm going to go hire some more staff augers. And over time, we've seen it grow. Pantex, on the other hand, they hamstring themselves. Okay, so one of the systems for resiliency is something like subcontract. Okay, big work comes in that I didn't expect. I can just go hire it if I already got the relationship set up. You self-organize around it, you staff up, you're good to go. Pantex had no such capability. So what we're doing right now is we're taking staff augs from Y12, shipping them to Pantex to do extra work at extra costs. And we're trying to establish this kind of mechanism because it is a good thing. The trick is how much of it do you want to do versus staff? Okay. Now, this all becomes a workforce that then feeds back. So you've got a high-level picture, right? Okay. So I'm all about requirements. So I was glad to hear Dr. Sonny talk about requirements, right? And I'd actually written these out beforehand, so it was no collusion. I started thinking, well, what are the requirements of our company? And these are just a few. And I put them up there. Programs. Their requirement, the top level, is to deliver mission products as designed within quality requirements on or ahead of schedule at or less than predicted cost. Okay? Production operations. And then there's going to be more requirements in this. Produce the mission products meeting program goals. Conduct operations in a fully compliant and safe manner as defined by procedure. Conduct operations in a manner to efficiently produce. Engineering. Keep all our mission systems and supporting facility systems operating within system design parameters that enable the mission production and program goals. Maintain the safety basis for safe operations to the U.S. standards. Development engineering will establish and mature new technology needs for future operations in accordance with technology strategy and roadmaps such that they're ready to go when we need them. Security. Keep the site safe and secure for DOE and company requirements. Assure all operations conform to security requirements. HR delivers that. So you have each organization does have their own goals, and they know them pretty well. Okay? Supply chain. Deliver what's needed, when needed, conform to standards, that sort of thing. And then, of course, new ones from transformation. Achieve cost savings as planned, as scheduled, and validated by the customers. Okay, so all departments have not only managed budgets as required, look for ways to reduce operational costs, but manage staffing to the MTP and knowledge retention.
I just want to make sure that everybody understands, because these are in your mind, that they're not so easy to get hold of, that you have to look at various different places to be able to get hold of all these requirements.
Exactly. So you come into work, you were hired, you're an engineer, you're an ESH, whatever, you're not told all this. You're told, here's the 1,000 procedures you gotta learn, here's how long it takes to do stuff. Oh my God, what are we gonna do, you know, to get stuff done? But if we were to take a DoD approach, clean slate, that you have that luxury, you can say, here are the requirements that I have at the top level. I'm gonna then get derived requirements that all organizations are gonna do X, Y, and Z. I'm gonna allocate those requirements. I'm gonna have this alignment that you're talking about over here if you did it this way, but we're not starting with a clean slate. We're coming in and saying, hey, here's this factory we're producing, we've done it for decades. You go argue with programs, they say, why do you need more money? Same number of widgets going out the door next year as this year. And you start to say, well, I gotta go do this cost savings, it's not free. Somebody brought up earlier, one of the issues is you need resources to go implement something different. But how are you gonna get there? Well, I don't know, we can't afford it, you know? Or my program's not gonna pay for it, her program's gonna pay for it, you know? Or it's burdened because it's used by multiple programs, but then you have the tragedy of the commons. Burden is like our overhead, but it's not just overhead as you normally think about it. It's something that's going to be used by everybody. So if we do a safety basis across multiple things, we have to pay for it out of the overhead in engineering. It starts to become a tragedy of the commons. I remember maintenance, they have certain budgets, certain headcount, but because we don't charge other departments for burden charges, it's sort of like somebody else is paying for it. So, is there anything broken around Blackwell? Okay, if you don't pay for it, say maintenance is budget, they're like a pizza shop, but they don't have pizza dough. They'll just ship as many pizzas as they want, but they don't have enough dough to go around, and because we're not paying for it, you know, the tragedy comes here, right? That's what I want to transition to a little bit here. If we're doing it the DoD way from a clean slate, which we don't have the luxury of doing, but you may need to resurrect as you do your analysis, you start looking at what should the derived requirements be, how will we test them, are they measurable requirements, and if they're not, you're going to have to get your customer to agree on what they are such that you can do that. Now you have this system, and I've architected, it's probably not great, but it's not bad. As an industrial / systems engineer, you got to be asking yourself, well, what are the systems that I see here? What are the parts? What are the boundaries between the systems? I mean, engineering wants to do their thing, production wants to do their thing, supply chain wants to do their thing, the way they've done it for decades, right? Then you might start saying, well, what are the, remember, one of the nice things about these architects and what we said about systems is the behaviors of the systems are sort of self-inherent within the system itself. And by way of analogy, we've seen that a system type and design and behavior is a little bit portable. So that's one of the nice things about this list of architecture. You say, do we have behaviors that we recognize that are occurring here? Okay, I mentioned one, the tragedy of commons, which didn't occur to me at first until I started thinking about burden. You ought to be asking yourself again, what are the, see this didn't update, what are the other archetypes that Dr. Sonny just talked about when you have this system? So at Y12, what was the first one? Policy resistance, okay? Does anybody working there see policy resistance? And because why? Okay. And so that was one of the things we just talked about. As one of the solutions, you had like 3 different ones. Overpower it. You know, you're going to do it no matter what, right? You know. But the best one is to start to align the goals. Right? What was the next one? I thought I had a list. I don't. But addiction.
Addiction is one.
Addiction is one, which was. I'm going to blame somebody else on it, right? And
Rule beating.
rule beat. Oh, does anybody beat rules here? You know,
That's about the only way to get work done.
exactly. That's what I was going to say. The mindset is to get my work done. I'm going to call because I know he'll do it quickly or else on the side of that sort. Does that happen? Let's see. What was the tit for tat? I think of the escalation. You know, hey, you know, so and so screwed me over this last time. I'm going to screw them over. You know, how do I do it? Let's talk about what's the drift to low performance. Okay. Historically, at the site, as I understand it, you tell me if I'm wrong. You know, we were operating well, and people got concerned with the safety. Right? What did it do? Shut down the system. Shut down. I mean, we want to talk about the event to scare everyone. You know, how do we start back up? How do we ensure we're safe? And so we did what we always do: is we added more process on top of it. And I heard that prior to the CNS transition, that the prior incumbent was, you know, hoping, you know, to stay on, and they were trying to assure any kinds of things that were happening were indeed super safe, and whatever you had from the customer that was golden. And all of a sudden, certain things changed in the behaviors of how we operate. I don't know how many times I've heard this one, that this case where something went wrong, a skilled trade comes up and looks at it and says, you know what, this wire's unplugged. I can no longer plug in this wire. I have to go get a work package done. I've got to get, I don't know how many people involved. Whereas before I could say, from my skill and my training, I know that this wire's unplugged, I can plug it in. Okay? And so you have more and more procedures and people involved, cost goes up, delays happen, and people don't understand why. So you have to look at that balance, that conflict of be safe, be secure, and get product out the door. Okay? In terms of possibly a drift to low performance, you know, hey, you know what, this is the way the world is now, it takes forever to do it, I'm here, I'm drawing a paycheck, you know, I'm happy. So there may become an expectation that, you know, whatever I did last year is fine because that's the way it is. So, and what was the solution there in the drift to low performance?
Don't allow your level to go down arbitrarily.
Or actually even set a goal as to your highest bar, you know. So actually think about Y12 or any of the systems as you go and analyze O&L. Start thinking about what are the behaviors you see there. And if you're not sure, you ought to be thinking about, well, how am I going to find out that it's really behavior there? Think about how do I, is it a survey? Is it detailed interviews? Is it measures I can put in place? How can I determine if that behavior is there? Because the nice part is you have a cookbook to some degree of saying, hey, these things have been proven effective over time of things that another tool in my toolbox, besides value stream mapping, besides all the other great things that we have here. There's maybe some quick answers of saying, you know what I really have to do is observe and verify the behavior is valid. Think about what they say are the problems with that. Think about what are the probable solutions to it. And then start to try to convince the people in charge that this behavior is being counterproductive based upon some of the things that you've been learning. I mean, so I say cookbook because in that sense, I have some prescriptive things that a doctor, you come in a doctor with some symptoms, say, here's prescription, go try this, go try that. So there are a few things that we can do once we have the understanding and insight that you gain from this class, okay? That does not by any means mean the work is done, but it has a way to maybe get you on the right track, especially when you have something that was grown up over decades and has evolved to where it is. Okay? So when you think about my model, your model, what have you, think about what are the behaviors that I'm seeing there, and then what are the possible solutions to that. Maybe it's the first step. And then get into the little more elaborate modeling and analysis to help refine that perception or see what you're missing that you haven't looked at yet. You know, what is unique about this situation that, or a new way of doing it that I never thought of. The architect it's just a cheat sheet of potential solutions. That's when you bring in value stream mapping, the new thing that Dr. Sani had, all those other methods. And then one thing that I think we really need to do at Y12 that you're seeing here in this class and in these systems in here is modeling and simulation and analysis, okay? What we have tendency to do is well, I think it's the easiest thing. I think you talked about that last time, you know, what's the easy thing to do? What's the intuitive thing to do? Well, it's value stream mapping because that's something I can easily get my head around, right? But what we've seen before is the nonlinearity treatment. What is it that, you know, I think I'm going to do this, tweak this knob, and all of a sudden that doesn't happen. So go back to here for a second. I said that we told the government that we need only this many number of heads a priori, and we're now 3 years down the road, over here. That's the head count limit coming in here. But my basis of estimate, you know, the way we've always done it in the past, says I need 10% more people. Now I've got to convince a customer that I need 10% more people. At the same time, I've already told them that I would need, you know, maybe 2% less than what I have. Okay? And to further complicate things, what we said is we're going to have some cost savings from this activity, Mr. Program Manager. I'm going to return a portion of that cost savings back to you to do whatever you want with it. And I'm going to put some over here to reinvest so that I can start to attack the building falling down, right? But now the way they've done it on the financial side is they said, oh, well, you know, the cost savings is going to come to this program, so you're now, Mr. Program Manager, you're measured by getting product out the door. You know, like you have fewer dollars than you ever had before to do that, and all of a sudden we say, well, we're going to take away 10% of your money and put it in escrow because this cost savings is going to come out. And you're saying, hey, wait a minute. Why am I paying for all this if everybody else is going to benefit? You know you can't get there. That cost savings is not going to come into play for a couple of years even. So now you've got the individuals, program managers, incentivized. I mean, they're grown up incentivized by, hey, the more money I control, the more product I control, the more life is good for me. That's how I'm incentivized as a doctor, right? To saying, okay, I'm going to take away part of your money because it's going to be cost savings that you're going to realize a few years down the road. Take it on grace. And at the same time, you know, the bean counters over here are not so sure that this is going to pan out, so they're not approving the ACB. So last year we went almost an entire year before we got an approved budget. So what happens is you put in place a plan, somebody comes in and says, hey, I need to do more work, and someone say, well, it's not an ACB for the extra work, but I want to give you extra money to do it, but they want to approve the original baseline, so they won't put it in. So you're getting all kinds of hidden loops and delays of how we do business because of how we set this up. Now, everybody's out there working as hard as they can to make the thing work. I mean, you're out there thinking about the best solutions you can put in place. You're saying, God, my gosh, if we just did this, you know, we'd save a ton of money. And those ideas come in, and they build into CRIs to try and go satisfy this. But we have huge delays happening in terms of approval of budgets, verifying what we're doing, and that taking money away from program managers who are measured on that, and trying to do the job with less money. Oh, and at the same time, down here, you've had staffing demands, okay? So I can show you beautiful plots. Engineering has done a great job of estimating our staffing and staff aug across both sites, and we have a great model predicting. So we have a great thing we're measuring. And we're saying, here's our head count over time, and our model is like this. We can project it very well. ACB is here. They come down and say, hey, your head count's here. Oh my God. And this has in people we're recruiting, people retiring, people leaving for whatever reason, other departments stealing engineers. Don't do that, please. A few that we steal in to make engineers. We have a wonderful model to predict. Oh my God, we're going to get near this limit here. So what do we do? Well, back over here, we're doing staffing. I think maybe an extra VP needs to prove that. I think our COO needs to prove that. So even though you've been building a wonderful model, you know what your headcount is, you've been managing into it, you finally convinced them last year to let us hire to our forecast. And believe me, I assure you that my budget and people count lines here, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we hired too many people at Y12. We didn't hire enough at Pantex. Put in extra delay loops in terms of hiring, and all of a sudden it comes to a standstill. I've got a candidate for a job that's taken me probably 3 months to actually try to interview, and I'm still waiting on yet another delay loop I didn't know within finance to approve travel costs so that we can fly them in to interview. And it's because of this fear, which we know what will happen from our bathtub, right, or the other control system. We're going to start to see this come down. We'll try to ramp back up, and we'll start to see oscillations. But you know that because you've been in this class, but the others don't know that. So somehow we have to help them understand that this really happens, and this is the effect. While they're dealing with conflicting constraints of headcounts that I've sold the government on, extra scope, all these other things, and the way we've always done it. Okay, so DoD is easy compared to this. Okay, easy. But that's why we need you in here doing this, because we need people with the skills to understand the mission, how government works, how we have to be safe, how we have to staff, the business side of things, how do we make money, how do we, CNS still has to make a profit even though it's only a small amount, how do we get it reinvested, all these sorts of things, you need to understand that. And then on top of that, you need to understand how to analyze the system and communicate it, the insights that you have back to stakeholders so you can actually affect change, okay? So what we have right now is we have initiatives on process improvement, PES, and it's sort of like a Toyota lean thing. I've not been to the training yet, but you have people in the different parts, and they're all looking down here. They're saying, how do I improve my little thing down here? Okay. And you know from this class here recently, this alignment of goals at the top is going to make the biggest difference. And we're off down here. So we have to somehow convince people to tie these things together. Improvements down here, the goals on top. So then when in engineering, when we're doing something and I have a metric, it needs to be really measuring all the things that really matter. That I'm proving that I'm getting product out the door, I'm not shutting down operations, I'm doing so safely. We have to have that alignment up and down. Okay? What questions do you have? Because this is all what we mean by system syncing. It's like understanding it, thinking out your tools, figuring out how to analyze them, figuring out how to convince us.
I think this is an excellent example. For me, a lot of people have done a lot of work, and therefore it looks like this, and therefore you can say, oh, I see what it is. And to be able to see this on a piece of paper looks easy. For you to recreate these type of systems and understand that is I would say takes a fair amount of effort to be able to do it. So not only do you have to understand it, you have to understand the requirements, you have to be able to put it all together, understand the relationships and all that stuff. So I just want to make sure that you understood that a piece of paper up there, how much estimated time do you think people have put into that?
They put an inordinate amount of time down here. Very little, if any, up here.
I mean, just in understanding that system. I mean, there's a fair amount of time. But here's what I'm getting, and maybe this is something that you have. There's not a lot of people out there that think like this. And that's your advantage.
I got a question, maybe some advice from you guys. From what I see at Y12 a lot is that something happens, and from a high level, we make a very emotional decision. And then it propagates through the whole system, and we don't even know how it's going to respond yet. But it's a directive. This is going to happen, and it's usually because you know, we think our customer requires that or really wants to see that, and it really changes how we operate. But when you start to model something like this and then something like that happens, and all of a sudden the model's just thrown out the window because you have no idea how it's going to react anymore. I don't know. I've tried my best on a lot of times we've had something happen to say, wait, that's a really emotional reaction. Are we sure that's, I mean, that's the blinders right here. I'm making it, yeah, we'll meet what we're going to do in 3 months, but we're going to really affect the system. And I can't keep people from doing it, or I can't make them see that that's a really emotional.
Right. That's a great question. And remember how I said that we talked about Y12, we have a system that operates, and we were talking about self-organizing behavior and resiliency of the system. And I maintain that Y12 is pretty darn resilient. What happens when something happens? You get an action officer, you get everybody pulled together, you get an ad hoc team, you're gonna go fix it right away, you're showing the customer you're taking it seriously, right? And so you have that. So if you're one of the people who do that, have anybody heard of the firefighter syndrome? You become addicted to that a little bit, right? You know, that's pretty cool. You're on top of the world, you're making that happen, but by golly, we can do that. Now, here's the other thing. I mean, here's something unique experience to me coming into Y12. Okay? We have a factory here, and we're producing valuable product, right? We have a customer, and they say our partners, right? Who are overseeing it because they want to make sure that we do things the right way, right? Day in, day out, we have factory reps, we have all over, and their job is to make sure that we produce to what we said we were going to do effectively. Okay? Very important job. We also have ENFSB, political appointees, defense board, saying, you know what? I'm going to come in, I've got people stationed here, I want to see, is this really happening the way it's supposed to be? So all of a sudden you've got somebody overseeing the overseer as well as overseeing us. And oh, by the way, the ultimate customer here is DOD, right? So you have that customer. And oh, by the way, in the case of UPF, we're going to build UPF, that's going to be these things. We also have a government group called UPO, Uranium Production Office, who is tied to making sure that happens. UPO is tied to the site, and you have some boundary issues between different organizations. So, because of the work we do, we are in a microscope, okay? And if your management of this, last thing you want to have happen is a nun come over the field, right? Or an upset. And so that's why people get involved, even at the management level, of what I'll call the firefighter mode, of being very reactive, because we're good at reacting. But our fix is, you know, putting more process on it. We want a deterministic system. That's why we have thousands of procedures. We just need experts to execute them all perfectly. I had an event happen, resolved as normal. Key person here, very high up individual, said, you know, if we just had, you know, if they just did X instead of Y, you know, human error, we're all human, right? But what our top level management wants, Morgan Smith, he comes down and says, what is underlying this? What is below this? It's not just, don't come back with human error. Don't come back with, it was a quality problem or something. He wants to say, what's down here? I believe what's down here is we have some failures in the system engineering side because we've evolved away from what we've learned here. And I think fundamentally to get some of the more, I didn't mean to be, I felt after class last time that I was being a little bit harsh when I said, hey, we're trying to get rid of problems we had for decades. What I'm trying to say is there's some root causes here that are based upon the systems and systems of systems that have evolved. And I think until we look down deep and we start to change the systems, well, that's the only time we're going to get a different behavior as you learn, right?
But it goes back to this alignment from that ad hoc group. That, I mean, his goal is to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a solution to the problem, not a solution to the overall system.
Absolutely. I can't go into the events, but that was one of the reasons we did an assessment of system engineering practices. That's another reason we got to invest in people. From supply chain at both sites, from things that happen, we do the firefighting and we put a solution on that's never going to make it happen again, right? But it's becoming more and more brittle, right? And so the resiliency that we have built in is not a resilient system of an adaptation. Our resiliency is all from the firefighting or the ability to bring on more subcontractors. That's still, if we want different behaviors, then we have to change the system. And the challenge that somebody, I think you and others have asked me, which is probably the hardest thing of all, is how do you convince customers who don't understand this, the value of what this is going to bring about if they affect that change, especially when they don't have the money set aside to do it. You have to convince them that that extra process, that extra step that's over here, if we do things a little differently, we'll come up with a totally different solution that'll be, we won't have as many fires. Other insights or thoughts?
I mean, my insight was simply as that is there is not enough systems engineering thought process that exist in various organizations where somebody could say, oh my God, let me, if I made that decision, that emotional decision, what impact would it have on everything else? I think that is what you're building at this time at Y12. My impression is, and Mark would know better than I, that at this moment may or may not exist in most organizations. And therefore, that's why you see it as an emotional, but it could be that emotional is because it's driven by some sponsor or partner or something like that. But the tremendous insight that says, well, if we did that, where would I have additional problems? Where would there be misalignments? I think that's what you're building. That's what may not exist, and that's what you're building.
So it's a long journey. Back to your question you asked, I'm looking at you because you asked me a question, pointing question of how do I convince a customer that this is different. So at that point, our customers are starting to recognize it. So I spent 2 days or a day and a half this week with NPO, the ones who oversee mission engineering. We talked about a lot of things. One of the most fundamental things that they agreed on is what we're doing right here. Systems engineering, we have to do some pilots, we have to show things differently. So it's a long journey, but our partners are on board with us trying to do things. The thing is, we have to get it to the other parts of NPO, the other organizations, and we got to figure out how to work together. So it's not just engineering; it's fire protection or whoever, all figuring out how do we align to the same goals. And only when you go back out and you spread out to your different departments, you should now have a network to help us figure out how to do this together. Any questions?
Are they going to be responsive to listening?
They're going to take some risks, okay? I mean, you think about it. What was the brochure I showed you a few weeks ago? Systems thinking, processes. So what we're doing right now is we're saying, hey, this class, the things we're doing over here aligns to this. We have just agreed between Mission Engineering and NPO to put it into our goals for the year. We will have certain pilots in place. We will do certain things that are tied to this. We have to get more of that happening, I think. And you know that's what drives us at the top. It's like, hey, we're going to hit all the check marks on this. What are the must-dos? So it's going to take time, but I think it will. Or we've done other events here. We've responded with firefighting. We put Band-Aids in place. We've assured the customer everything's going to be fine. And other events are just like it's going to occur. Then you're going to see some excitement. How do we do something with it? Okay. Hopefully that's not what happens, but that's the kind of thing that's a danger if you have a brittle in a firefighting team. Nothing against firefighters, no. But that becomes a mindset that for sane operations is not the Now, you said I'm teaching next week all the whole time, or am I doing a split?
You tell me how you wanna do it.
Okay, I have something fun I wanted to introduce to the class, okay? And we talked about it when we started. There's an outside activity I believe in. I can tell you CNS believes in it, ORNL believes in it, and that's STEM education, STEM activities for high school students. And has anybody heard of FIRST, or the FIRST Robotics Competition? Okay, so I can tell you right now, CNS has about a half a dozen mentors at the different area teams. ORNL, I know, has certain ones. I think Oak Ridge in particular is led by Dr. Buckner. I would like to give you a little bit of an intro to that. It is trying to teach engineering to high school kids in a competition, which is a 6-week competition for a game that is invented newly every January. And they have 6 weeks to build a robot to execute certain goals. I can tell you, having done this now for 2 years, there is no systems thinking going on, okay, in that time period. They are, how do I put these things together? You know, we know how to build this drivetrain. You know, I think I want to shoot goals. I would like to challenge this class to learn a little bit about the competition. Think about how you would approach it from a systems engineering viewpoint. And think about how you would teach kids that are, you're herding cats, I can tell you, how you would tell them the value of this type of approach and show them how they're going to accomplish this thing with a better robot in 6 weeks. So that's a challenge, and hopefully get you out in the community, connect with the teams in your local area, start to learn a little about it, maybe become a mentor in your spare time, right? So I don't know that I need a whole class for that, but I'd like to introduce that because I think we're going to have some project-based activities coming up pretty soon, right? And so I was thinking one project might be something like that. You know, it's nice and then classified as something I think that benefits the overall growth of this.
I think the systems thinking, not that at that time we were thinking systematically. I remember there was a class we took when I was going to school called Artificial Intelligence. And there was no exams. You had to develop a program with a partner. So there was 2 per team.